When we experience unusual and unexplainable activity in a house or on a plot of land, we often call it haunted. But there are many different types of hauntings out there. I've had the great pleasure of speaking to many people about their hauntings. I've had many experiences myself, and I've realised that a lot of people can't discern what type of haunting they've got, which is really important if we want to be doing something about it, especially if it is highly disruptive. So today, I wanted to break down the different types of hauntings we might experience and the symptoms that we might experience during each of them. Before we dive into the specifics, let's talk generally about what a haunting is. They can occur to any property on any plot of land and can be experienced by anybody, but they're usually defined as being a series of unusual and unexplained events that commonly ramp up over time. So as an example, we have a couple and their cat who live in a detached property. There's no one around that could be making noises from the surrounding buildings. All of a sudden, they're lying in bed at night and they can hear things moving around downstairs. They assume it's just their cat doing their nightly activities and they go back to sleep. The next day, the same thing happens. Oh, it's just the cat, it's fine. A week goes by, and suddenly it's not just the strange shuffling around downstairs, now things start going missing. Your car keys end up underneath the sofa. That single earring that you really wanted to wear the next day has ended up under the fridge, and once again you assume it's probably just the cat messing around. Another week goes by, and you hear the same strange activity, except this time, you know for a fact that your cat is in the room with you. You start to panic. Does this mean someone is in the house? Has someone broken in? You go downstairs, you check it out, there is no one there. All of the doors and the windows are completely closed. And while you're down there, it is deathly silent. So you think you're just imagining things, you go upstairs, you close the door, you get back into bed, you turn off the light, and suddenly you hear it. The shuffling. Like there's someone moving stuff around, except you know for a fact that no one is there, and now you're starting to worry. Another week goes by, and it's starting to get worse. Now it's not just the sound of things moving around, things now are really going missing. And another week goes by, and you start hearing voices. This is kind of a classic, stereotypical haunting. Activity starts ramping up over time, and you have no way of explaining it. You know it's not the TV, you know it's not the animals, you know that no one is in your home. You might even start experiencing strange smells like cigarette smoke or perfume. These things can really happen. Usually it's not to this extent, usually it's more subtle than this, but thousands of people all over the country, all over the world, are experiencing these things on a daily basis. Most of the time, nothing bad comes from it, but sometimes you want to deal with this situation. You want to understand why, you want to understand how, and maybe you want to get rid of it from in your home, and to do that, we need to get specific. So, let's talk about the specifics of hauntings, because the problem that we're having in the 21st century is that a lot of people tend to paint hauntings with the same brush. And the reality is that no two hauntings are going to be identical, and a lot of the time they may well be caused by different things. When we move into the specifics, there are a lot of different types of hauntings, and it can be really hard to discern which is which, because many of the symptoms are often very similar. The first type, though, would be a ghost haunting. This is the classic type that everyone thinks of when they think of a haunted house. Now, a ghost is a human that has passed over from life into death. They may be earthbound, that being that they are tied to a particular property or a particular plot of land, or they might be more transient, coming and going to and from the other world. When we're talking about ghost hauntings, there's two primary varieties. We have active hauntings and we have passive hauntings. And the distinction between the two is that active hauntings are ghosts that are aware that they're dead, and passive hauntings are ghosts that aren't aware that they're dead. So in an active haunting, you may well get responses. Things are going to be reacting to you. They're aware of you. They are conscious of what they're doing and what is happening. So they might move things around, they might open and close doors, you might get strange phantom smells, they might be trying to tell you something, especially if you are sensitive to spirits. They might be trying to tell you about their life, tell you about their death, tell you about something important to them, someone important to them. You may well get the smell of cigarette smoke or perfume, knocks, bangs, whispers, full-body apparitions, footsteps. You might get a lot of different symptoms from an active ghost, but the main distinction here is that they are reacting to you. So if you ask them a question, they may well give you a response. If you were to use a voice recorder, for instance, like many people do, you might hear things back on that voice recorder. If you ask them questions by tapping on the walls, they may well be able to tap out 2 knocks for yes, 1 knock for no. If you ask them to stop doing something, they may well do it. But even if they don't respond to you in a pleasant way, they're interacting with you. They are reacting to your behavior. So if you get startled by something, they might do it more. If you tell them to stop, they might stop. If you ask them questions, they might answer you. Even if they aren't actively engaging with you, they are still reacting to your presence. A passive ghost is one that isn't aware that they're dead. So they're continuing to go through their daily life as though nothing has happened. This is a type of haunting that's primarily found in old properties, often where sudden death may have occurred that would stop them from knowing that they're dead. So we're talking servants falling downstairs, we're talking people who work with horses who've been kicked and have died really suddenly, we're talking people who would work in fields, who would have an accident in the fields, and the difference between life and death is instantaneous. It happens so quickly, they don't even realise it's happened, and so they're going to keep going through the motions of their day-to-day lives. So this is where you might hear someone cooking in the kitchen at the same time every day, but there's no one there. Or you might have the smells of food cooking, but there's no one there. You might feel a cold breeze brush past you at 6 a.m. on the dot every day on the same spot on the stairs. This kind of repeated behaviour. This kind of haunting, though, is really easy to confuse with a residual haunting, which we will get onto in a minute. So with an active ghost haunting, they may be attached to an object that's been brought into that property. They might have been brought into that space. So this can really occur anywhere at any time. But with a passive ghost haunting, you're usually looking at someone who's died really suddenly on that plot of land or in that property. So it's unlikely that you'll bring them in with an item that you've purchased and brought into the house. They're more likely to have been there the entire time. With passive ghost hauntings, though, they're not going to react to you. They don't know that you're there, and they think that you don't know that they're there either because they don't know that you're there. This can get a little bit confusing, but they literally just keep going as though they haven't died. They might have been doing the same routine every day for the last 200 years, and they wouldn't know that they're gone. So they're not going to engage with you in any way. What they commonly get confused with is a residual haunting. Now, the main distinction between a residual and a ghost haunting is that residual haunting doesn't include a ghost. There's nobody there, there's no spirit that's passed over to cause the haunting. Instead, it's usually a severe, traumatic, or high-energy situation that's practically been etched into the walls of that property. This is where the idea of the stone tape theory comes in, the idea that the building itself is able to hold memories and energy. And so with this, you're going to be having an echo of events. So it's not going to be someone's entire daily routine. It's more likely going to be something that happened all of the time. If you live in an old property, this is way, way more likely, especially one that's had a lot of energy and a lot of history. So a few examples would be every morning at 6 a.m. you hear a phantom bell that isn't there. This bell may well have been one of the housekeeper bells. This bell may well have been a chime on a clock, but that clock and those bells no longer exist in this house. And the reason you're hearing it is it's been literally etched into the property because it's happened at the same time every day for 100, 200 years. In a slightly sadder note, you might also hear the sounds of someone falling down the stairs at the same time every day. And that's because this isn't an event that's happened so often the energy is etched into the property, but it's something that happened with so much force and so much energy. It took someone's life in an instant that trauma, that high energy has been etched onto the walls, and it's repeating itself over and over again. Now, I'm hoping that you can see why the passive ghost and the residual kind of get conflated together because they sound really, really similar. The main differences that I have found in my experience is that residual hauntings tend to get worse when energy is added into that property. So if you do a spell or a ritual and you don't clear all of that energy, you may well find that those residuals start getting worse. Or if you do renovation work on a property, you'll likely find that that energy that you're putting into literally damaging the walls, then increases the extremeness of the output. So you might go from experiencing a strange thing once every month to experiencing it once every week. Or instead of hearing just a few seconds of someone falling down the stairs, now you hear the whole thing of it. Whereas in a passive ghost haunting, they do not engage with you at all. They don't react at all when you do really anything. So that's the main distinction that I have found. I would love to know other people's distinctions in their experience. I think that's always really useful. So these 3 types of hauntings are the kind that is triggered by a human, whether this is the traumatic death of someone or whether this is them passing over and becoming a ghost. It is triggered by a person. Not all hauntings are, though. The most famous type of haunting in movies is definitely the poltergeist. Now, a poltergeist is defined as being a noisy ghost, and there's some debate as to whether or not they're a human or whether they aren't a human. That's really down to the individual. For me, I'm not sure. I think some poltergeists may well be just humans that like playing tricks. They are an active ghost that has gone on to become more. Or they may well be non-human spirits who just like playing tricks. The distinction here, though, is a poltergeist is not your casual knock on walls, I'm going to move a few things around. A poltergeist is often a highly aggressive spirit. And I will be referring to them as a spirit because not all of them, in my opinion, are ghosts. So they aren't necessarily human. They could be non-human as well, so spirit. They will open cupboards, throw stuff around, break stuff. They will scratch you. They will prod you, poke you, jab you. They will make you ill. The extent of a poltergeist haunting is very varied. They can go, I've experienced poltergeists knocking on doors, trying to freak me out, but then other people will experience them to such a severe degree that they can't go into their own homes. And it's such a scale as to where the poltergeist haunting can lie. Usually, they come into a space, so they haven't been there the entire time. They'll come in, whether they're looking for entertainment or they'll come in on an object, and they want a reaction. They want energy off you. And if they can get that energy off you through fear, they will do that. If they can make you jump, make you scream, if they can make you uncomfortable, that energy is really enjoyable for them. Now, whether that's because they are a trickster type spirit and they want to play games with you, or whether they are just someone who wants the energy and they know a good way of getting that energy is to get you scared, that's where I think it's going to vary depending on the individual spirit that you're dealing with. But the main distinction here is that a poltergeist is actively going to become a nuisance. They are purposefully making you uncomfortable to a really strong degree. So while a normal ghost might move a few things around, poltergeists are going to be slamming doors. They're going to be growling in your ear. They're going to be making you jump. They're going to be scratching you. They're going to be doing things that are going to give a really, really strong negative reaction. Now, we do have demon hauntings. Now, I really want to put a big caveat here that these are not super common. Like, it's really, really unusual for someone to be dealing with this. It's just that certain groups of people tend to have more of a fear of demons than others, and also the media doesn't really help. So demons are non-human spirits. They're in a category all of their own, and they tend to come with their own type of symptoms. The main ones are smell. So it's usually the smell of sulfur or the smell of decay, like the smell of rot. If anyone's had the misfortune of going past a bush where an animal has died in it, you know the smell, like it's that smell. And they will usually ramp up over time. So it's kind of like getting roots into the ground. It'll start with little things, little noises, little bumps and bangs. But the main thing in my experience is the smell. It tends to start really small. So you might just think that something's gone bad in your fridge. So you clear everything out of your fridge and you can't find anything that's gone bad. So then you think, oh, well, maybe it's something, if you're in America, maybe like the disposal that you have in your sink. We don't have those in England. I don't really know what they're called. But, the sink disposal unit things. You might be thinking, oh, well, maybe it's something wrong with that. So you get that checked and that's totally fine. And the smell isn't going away. So you think, oh, well, okay, well, maybe the cat brought something in. So you have a look around, the cat's not necessarily reacting like there's an animal that it's brought in, and you can't find anything and the smell still doesn't go away. So you think, okay, well, maybe something's died in the attic. So you're doing all of these investigations, and as time is going on, the smell is getting worse and worse and worse. And then often it will get to the point where you start having really bad nightmares. That tends to be like the step up, is your dreams start being affected by that energy. It might not be that they are directly impacting your dreams, but just being in that energy is causing these dreams to happen. So you might start having more and more nightmares, more sleep paralysis. It is important though to discern the difference between a sleep paralysis demon and an actual demon. Not the same thing, but you might notice this kind of disturbed sleeping becoming more commonplace. You might also notice that irritability is starting to get out of hand. So if your husband packs the dishwasher wrong, it goes from being what should have been quite a calm, casual conversation to being an out-and-out fight. Now, I think there is really an important thing to say here, that if you are fighting a lot and it is getting out of hand, there is nothing to say that that is a demon. It's really important here to keep yourself safe and to make sure that you are physically and emotionally in a good place. But you will often find that when a demon is present, you do get the smells, you get strange activity, you get the bad dreams, and you also get more disagreements, fights, arguments. Frustration is a big one, where little things, it's like you're being chipped away at, like you're being scratched at all of the time. And sometimes you might actually be scratched, where you start waking up with marks on you that you know weren't there before. It's not commonplace though. I've had one very, very distinct demon experience in my entire time practicing as a witch. And I talk to a lot of people, and the majority of hauntings are not demon hauntings. It's one of the quite unusual hauntings that tends to have very, very discernible symptoms. So if you know it, you know it. If you're uncertain, it probably isn't. In my experience, I've also had bells. I don't mean like the tinkling of little bells. I mean like hand bells or big bells. And it usually is the marking of territory. At least that's what it was in the instance that I dealt with. It was the marking of territory. So if you enter into territory, you might hear a bell, and then when we left the territory again, we heard the bell again. That might not apply specifically to a house haunting, but if it is a haunting on the land, that's something to take into consideration. Now, animals in all of this are going to react differently per haunting. So with a demon haunting, they usually do not want to be anywhere near that space. They want to be far gone. They will actively avoid whole rooms of the house because of that activity. Same with poltergeists, but in a different way. So with a demon, usually they don't want to be in that room at any time, even if you're not getting any symptoms actively at that given moment. They will never want to be in that space at all. Whereas with a poltergeist, they'll usually be fine being in that space, but when the activity starts, they want out ASAP. If you're talking about a residual haunting, they usually won't react because there's nothing there to actively react to. Like there isn't a ghost that's there that they can experience that we can't. They're just dealing with the same signs of it as we are. Passive ghosts, you might find that there is a little bit of a reaction there, but it won't be as much as with an active ghost, where they might actively be staring or engaging with a spirit that isn't there. Like they might just sit and stare, and you don't know what they're looking at all, and it may well be that there's an active ghost in that space. But when it comes to demons, they want out ASAP. And you might also find, especially on property, so demon hauntings are more common on land than they are in buildings, so you're more likely to have it be like in a woodland or in a field or something. You'll find that things don't grow right. The natural world just doesn't really want to have anything to do with it, so animals will just be deathly quiet. There won't be any birds in that area at all. Crops won't grow right, the grass won't grow right. Something is just not right about that place. If there's a pond there, you might find that the fish start dying. That kind of a situation is likely what's going to be experienced with a more ingrained demon haunting. Now, emphasis here on ingrained, because all of these hauntings typically will ramp up over time, especially poltergeists and demons. So you'll find it getting considerably worse over time. So it's worth keeping an eye out and then just nipping it in the bud if you can. Now, one that is commonly confused for a demon, but definitely isn't, are shades. So shades, shadow people, are commonly found in properties. I've spent a lot of time around shades. I really enjoy them. I think they're lovely. They tend to observe and they tend to watch, and they're usually characterized by a shadowy figure that will lean in from the edge of a door and just observe you. And when you look towards them, you'll see them for the briefest second and then they'll move away again. They usually don't engage. They usually don't try to do anything. They just observe. But a lot of people, if they are scared of spirits, will have a really strong negative reaction to a shade that they maybe don't need to. Now, in all my time working with shades, I've never had a negative experience with them. That doesn't mean that I am the rule. I may well be the exception, but I found them to be sweethearts. Cute, kind, lovely, adorable. They want to observe you. They just want to be there. And they haven't really done anything negative personally, but that doesn't mean that that's the same everywhere. I think that's really an important thing I need to be pointing out, is that just because one person has a really negative reaction doesn't mean that another person will. And if one person has a really positive reaction, that doesn't mean that you won't have a negative one. Spirits are like people. Everyone is unique. Everyone is different. You're going to get on with some spirits more than others. Some you're going to have a really negative reaction to, and vice versa. Now let's get on to the ones that people don't tend to think about that much. So firstly, let's talk land wights, nature spirits, genus loci, and the like. These are usually hauntings because of behavior. So they aren't in your property because they want to be in that property. They aren't in your property because they're having fun. They're in your property or on your land because of something that has happened. And usually it will be a response to removal of woodland, the damage of standing stones and old landmarks, the disruption of burial mounds, as well as the digging up of land. Usually what causes this kind of a haunting is a response to your negative actions to the natural world. So if you've just poisoned a whole bunch of animals, they're going to be pissed at you. If you've taken out a standing stone because it was getting in the way, they're probably not going to be very happy with that. Same with the removal of woodland. These things are often the trigger point for what comes next. Now with these, I'm classing them as hauntings because when people experience the behavior, they tend to assume that they're being haunted by like a ghost. So you might find that everything that you try to build where you've taken out that woodland fails. So every time you try to put foundations in, something goes wrong. Oh, you're trying to put pipes in? Flooded. Oh, you're building walls? They're going to fall down. And you will find that no matter what you do, you cannot get what you want to do to work. So builders will quit, people will refuse to come into work, people will go on strike, things aren't going to work out, the glass always breaks, the wood is always too wet, the cement mixer isn't working. Something will repeatedly happen to stop you from further negatively impacting that environment. If you are trying to take a natural environment and turn it all into grass, you might find that your lawnmower keeps breaking down, or it keeps doing strange things. You're driving it along and then all of a sudden it veers in one direction that you weren't intending it to. You might find that every plant that you try to grow that is an invasive species keeps dying and keeps failing, or you might find that all of your plants are suddenly invaded by pests. These things are really commonly associated with things like demons. You get the idea of flies, and that definitely does occur with some demons, but not all. I feel like I need to kind of emphasize that. You may well experience a lot of flies in your home with demons. You might experience something similar with nature spirits, in terms of like pests on crops, where they're just trying just to stop you from doing what it is that you're doing. Now, I will go into like the different ways that you can work with these spirits and like work with the situation in a minute, but this is something that usually happens outside rather than inside. The last type of haunting that I wanted to touch on is actually of the fae, the fair folk, the wee folk, the little people, the good neighbours. These are really, really powerful and really enjoyable spirits to work with. I know that a lot of people have got negative associations with them. I really enjoy working with them, though again, because they are not human ghosts, they do not respond to human rules. They do not follow social cues that we have created as humans, and they can be tricky to deal with in certain circumstances, so do just bear that in mind. Now, a fae haunting is usually tricky fae, like trickster fae, or they may well be house fae or house spirits, brownies and the like. So with these, the signs may be the tinkling of bells, more like fairy bells, jingle bells, like very light bell sounds. You may also have a really sweet smell, so like sugar, Like that candied smell is really commonplace. You find that shiny things go missing. So it might be a single earring or your wedding ring or a piece of costume jewelry. Maybe it's even just something shiny that doesn't have any value. It's just gold nail polish or a gold little trinket box that you've got or something. It's often the shiny things that tend to go, or things that are kind of important to you. So it will be the car key that you really need, or it'll be one earring, or it'll be one sock will just go missing. And usually if you ask for it back, they will give it back to you again. They will engage with you actively. You might find that you wake up in the morning and your house smells really nice and clean and fresh, and that the dust that you were sure was there last night is now just suddenly gone. But on the other hand, you may find that when you allow your space to become messier, that they have a very negative reaction to that and they start stealing things that are actually important, scribbling things away. You might notice small shadows or small like light beings. I don't mean orbs, I mean like close to the ground. And generally they will respond to you if you respond positively to them. If you say hi to them when you come in, if you say good morning to them and good night to them, if you leave out offerings to them, they can be incredibly helpful and beneficial, especially when we're talking about things like brownies. But a lot of people, when they see things going missing, they immediately assume like poltergeist. But especially if you live in quite rural areas, especially if your home is quite old, you may well have a brownie or a house fae that has been there for a very, very long time, and they are trying to engage with you, because it's important to remember that, especially when we're talking about the UK, we've had the fairy faith for a very, very, very long time. And a lot of these fae remember a time personally when people would leave them offerings, or people would work with them, where people would honour them. And it's only in very, very recent times that we aren't doing that anymore. So you can build a relationship with them that way. Now, this is where it gets to the complicated bit. Now, I know this video is quite long because I've been talking for ages. How do we deal with these situations when they come up, right? What do we do to fix it? So let's start way back with active human ghosts. It's about deciding whether their presence in that environment is negatively impacting you to a degree that you cannot cope with or not. If they're active ghosts, they are able to engage with you. You can ask them to stop if you are struggling with some of their behavior, and usually they are carrying out this behavior as a way of gaining attention. And if you can give them that attention, they'll likely stop whatever it is that they are doing. So if you're finding that the knocking on doors at night is getting really disruptive, you might want to ask them if they're willing to express themselves in a slightly different way. You might want to learn more about them through divination, get a psychic in or a medium to be able to do some work with them. You might want to ask them if they want to move on or not. See if that's something that they want or whether it is that they want to stay here. Generally though, unless they are being highly, highly disruptive, you can simply communicate with them, talk to them, maybe get to know them a little bit more and see if it's someone that you can live with before you consider the whole cleansing, banishing, removal step. Though, of course, that is something you can do if you really need to. When it comes to passive hauntings, it really depends on what you feel best in that situation. So passive ghosts don't know that they're dead, so they're not going to be able to engage with you. So you really have two options. Either you leave them be, let them continue to do their thing, or you can allow them to move on. Now, usually I would leave this to mediums when it comes to a passive ghost, because they're better at kind of connecting to them, getting their attention, but essentially it allows them to learn in a comfortable way that they have passed and allow them to enter into the other world instead of being trapped here. And then it's up to the individual, once they know that they've passed, what they want to do. If we're talking residual haunting, there isn't really much you can do. It is something that's probably going to happen fairly infrequently. It's something that's probably going to fade off over time anyway, though maybe not in your lifetime. And it's usually something that you just have to deal with. It's etched into the fabric and the foundation of that property. Now, when we're dealing with poltergeists, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. And ultimately, it's going to depend on how comfortable you are engaging with them. So the first option is to ignore them. This is going to be one of the most annoying things that you can do for a poltergeist, is to pretend that they don't exist. If they slam a cupboard door, don't even flinch. Don't look at them, don't jump, don't make a noise, don't discuss it with anyone. Don't acknowledge it's happened at all. If they throw something across the room, no they didn't. What thing? I didn't see a thing. Pretend they aren't doing anything. Now, the danger with this, I do this a lot. They tend to get bored. And when they get bored and they're not getting the reaction that they want, they leave you alone. But sometimes they ramp up that behavior. So this is what I mean when I say it depends on how much you're willing to engage with them. You can ignore them. They might get really, really annoyed at that and ramp it up 1,000-fold. Or they might, and in most cases, they get really bored and they move on to someone else. You can give them energy in another source. So if they're trying to get energy from you reacting negatively to them, give them an energy source that they can use instead. It might not be what they want, but you can say to them, this is what I'm willing to offer. If you are happy to accept this, you can stay. If you aren't happy to accept this, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. But be sure that you know how to back that up when you do it. So an alternative energy source is always an option. You then, of course, can banish them. Cleanse, banish, cleanse, protect. That's typically the order. You want to shake up the energy in that space, push it out with a banishing, cleanse the space again to stop anything from immediately returning, and then stick up your protections, making sure that you yourself are also protected. That's kind of the next step. Demons. This one is where I would tend to leave it to the professionals. It doesn't happen very often. It's a very rare circumstance to get yourself into in the first place. Usually, this is not something you've ever done. Demons will move into a territory and they will camp out there. And if you just happen to live on that territory, you may well experience not so great things. This is something that I've experienced personally. If you enter territory, they're not going to like it. Even though they've only just turned up and you've lived there for 50 years, it doesn't make a difference. They don't care about that. I would leave that to the professionals to be dealing with that. Personally, I wouldn't be going in because you never entirely know what you're dealing with. So that's just something, I don't want to scare anybody because it's quite unusual for that to happen anyway, but I would leave that one to professionals. When we're talking about shades, usually they don't really want anything from you. They don't want anything negative from you. They don't want anything positive from you. They're just kind of there. If they are making you uncomfortable, you can ask them to leave, and usually they will do so. They don't want to cause you any unnecessary stress. They will typically leave if you ask. And if they don't, and you still feel desperately uncomfortable, cleanse, banish, cleanse, protect. When it comes to nature spirits, land wights, genus loci, it is about repairing the damage that has been done. For some people, this damage hasn't been done by them. For some people, it's been done by someone in the past. Maybe you just bought a property and the renovators ripped out all of the trees in the back garden and the spirits are pissed. They are likely going to take it out on you because you are now the owner of that property. You are now the protector of that land. And it's then about renaturalizing it again, putting some trees back in again, apologizing, giving offerings, respecting the natural world, trying to not use pesticides, try to protect the environment that has been previously damaged. And if you have done the damage, it might be worth putting it back again. Apologize, do what you can to make amends. It is about being protective and gentle with the land that we are in possession of. And they will respond very positively to that and very negatively to the purposeful damage of the natural world. And then lastly, fair folk. Now, this is one where it's very much going to depend on what it is that you are dealing with. Typically, communing with them. Say hi, say hello, let them know that you acknowledge them, that you appreciate them, give them offerings. Be aware of their presence, be mindful of them is really important, and not be dismissive of them. If you want to piss off a fairy, be dismissive of them. It's the first thing that you can do. Be rude and dismissive. Instead, it's about talking to them like you were talking to someone that you know. Talk to them, get to know them, ask what they like, try to keep the space tidy. I'm a sucker for piling books up in corners, but try as much as you can if you're like me and you're like a hoarding goblin when it comes to books. If they do something really nice, give them an offering. You don't need to risk saying thank you if that's not something that you feel comfortable with. If you're on a one-on-one relationship with the fair folk, that's a different matter. But if you are just getting started, give them an offering in return. give them a little bit of cake, a little bit of milk where it's safe to do so, leave that for them, and then have that be your way of giving your appreciation for them. It's basically just about being courteous. Now, if you really don't want them there, it's tricky. I wouldn't necessarily banish them, because I think that's just a recipe for disaster. And especially if they've been living in that property for a very, very long time. They've lived there longer than you have, so it might be a case of sucking it up and dealing with it. Living with the fair folk is a really lovely experience if you can be on a good rapport with them. And I think that's the thing. It's about dealing with the hand that you've been given, perhaps, when it comes to the fair folk, because they can be phenomenal to work with. You can request things nicely, that they maybe don't do this for a short amount of time, and give them reasons, give them explanations. Communicate is the main thing with all of this. So that is a very basic overview of some of the hauntings that you might experience. Now, there is one more at the very end that is kind of an honourable mention. It's very, very unlikely that you would ever experience this though, and that is servitors. If you live in a house where there has been a practitioner who has passed over without dismantling their servitors, they may well still be in that property, and you might experience this in energy. Batteries start failing, you feel very drained of energy, lights start flickering and the like, because they're trying to get energy from other sources, because a servitor needs energy to sustain itself. And so you might find that starts happening. You may see strange shapes, strange shadows, get strange dreams and the like, where you have a figure in your dreams that you don't recognise, this kind of thing. It is a very rare experience to have. The majority of servitors are built with breakdowns in them, they are built with time limits in them, and once they don't have the energy, they will typically cease to exist. It's only in a few cases where you will get servitors that kind of go rogue, but it could be something to consider if you know that the previous occupant of that house was a practitioner. Then there may well be leftover familiars, leftover servitors that might need to be dealt with or worked with, depending on what you feel comfortable with. So that is my very, very brief overview of the different types of hauntings. I hope that this was useful. It might not be. I might have been waffling this entire time. If you have your own experiences with any of these type of hauntings, do let us know down in the comment section, because I think a lot of people struggle if they've never had first-hand experiences to know what it's like. So if you have and you feel comfortable doing so, or you can submit them so that I can share the stories on a video in the future. If you've gotten this far, please leave some little ghosty emojis in the comment section, and I'm going to try to heart as many of them as I can. If you could like this video, it would really, really mean a lot to me. Any questions or comments down in the comment section, and if you do enjoy the magical content on this channel or in this video, feel free to hit subscribe. I try to post magical content every single week. And with that being said, I hope you're staying safe, I hope you have a marvellous magical day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!